A very good evening to all our viewers. Thank you for making time this week again to join us on the agenda. My name is Toivo Ndjebela, your host. Tonight, we are continuing the conversation that has been dominating the discourse in the country for the past couple of weeks, and that is around equal rights as they pertain to sexuality, same-sex marriages. Of course, we saw the Supreme Court ruling recently in that regard, and to help us unpack further the subject tonight on the show is Omar van Reenen, who is a civil rights activist and also very much involved in the equal rights around sexual minorities. Thank you, Omar, for making time.
Thank you, Toivo, for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Let's address the elephant in the room first. On Thursday, you had a press conference as a group. We will delve into the overall subject of the press conference, but there's something that, some exceptions that you took about the way Namibian Sun covered its story on the front page that day. What were the issues?
Okay, well, definitely, we can go into that first. So it was really disheartening to see the Namibian Sun post this article, and I mean, this headline took up most of your page on the front page. Yes. Even the content of the story is 2 short columns, but this is the headline. Yeah. And I want Namibians to understand that such headlines are dehumanizing, denigrating, and has no place in a born-free Namibia where we should respect everybody's dignity. Your headline says, anal sex pastor is suspended for defying God's will. Such a headline continues to stigmatize the LGBTIQ community. And such a headline could have been done in an alternative matter. This is a pastor who is being allegedly accused of sexual misconduct, for sexually exploiting their victim for sex in offering them a job. That should have been the headline that you should have focused on. This story could have been an opportunity to engage with the constant reports of sexual abuses in the churches in this country. This story could have been an opportunity to engage with the negative spotlighting that's put on the LGBTQ community. Yeah. Instead, such a headline continues to stigmatize the LGBTQ community. It continues to hypersexualize the LGBTQ community. And us as a community, we aren't a walking figure for sex or just here to be sexualized and looked at from a sexual lens. And as a media house with a great reputation, a long-standing reputation in Africa's freest press country, this should not have been a headline. Yeah. With great responsibility or with great power comes great responsibility. And you all have signed on to the Media Ombudsman's Code of Ethics, yes, right? Yes. And this Code of Ethics says that the journalist community should be held to the highest standard to maintain their credibility and keep the trust of the public, to strive for truth and avoid unnecessary harm, to show special concern for children and for other vulnerable groups. Yeah. When children walk past newspaper stands and see this, especially queer children, this is harmful to them. Yeah. 4.1 of the Media Code of Ethics talks about privacy, dignity, and reputation. Yeah. It says that the media must exercise care, consideration in matters of private lives of individuals, and protect their dignity. And lastly, 8.3 of this Code of Ethics says, talks about discriminatory and hate speech, that the media must avoid discriminatory messaging or denigratory references to people's sexual orientation. Yeah. This headline goes against the Code of Ethics as well. Yeah. I'm very disappointed in this, and I would have expected much better from the Namibian Sun. Yeah. I'm not asking for an apology. The LGBTQ community is not asking for an apology, because this is things we face in our daily lives. Yeah. In fact, I think that you should apologize to your journalists first and the people who work at the Namibian Sun first, especially the queer people who are employed at this media house. Apologize to them first and foremost, because how denigrating must it feel to be associated with a newspaper and be employed with a newspaper that is going to put headlines out just to sell, just for sensationalism or to sell papers, to oppress or continue to perpetuate at a time when the queer community is at its most vulnerable. You're going to continue to fan the flames of hate. No, man, Toivo, that's not the way.
I hear you. I need to challenge you on that because, not really to challenge you, but you have to understand the concern here. So, is it the anal sex part, or what exactly is the issue there? Because that is exactly what happened. What is alleged to have happened.
Okay, so vagina sex accused pastor or penis sex accused pastor, why do you need to talk about the sexual parts or the sexual conduct of it? I mean, here in your paper, you are saying who is accused of allegedly having anal sex with a young man. Why do you need to talk about anal sex or sex in that way, especially knowing that the queer community is hypersexualized? Do we talk about the specificality of sex when it's heterosexual people? Do we? Why is the headline talking about anal sex when the headline should talk about a pastor that is accused of sexually exploiting someone? But you're going straight to the sexuality of things, denigrating and dehumanizing a queer community's identity. So it didn't have to be put on there, but obviously it's done that way to sell papers.
I think the context, Omar, here was that this is a case in which the younger man who allegedly had sex with this pastor says that he's actually not even gay. Of course, we can debate that and whatnot. He says he's not gay, but he had to have that kind of sex out of desperation to get a job. And for us, that is where it comes in. If it was a normal, everyday gay relationship, I don't think we would have highlighted this. But we highlighted it because if the person says they are not gay, but they had to have anal sex in order to secure a job, I thought it's important to highlight that.
No, absolutely not. What you're doing is reinforcing the idea that the LGBTQ community is hypersexual and predatory. That's what it did. And that's super harmful.
But this is a predatory situation of a man saying he must have sex with this person. That is predatory behavior. Okay,
so why did it not stop at the fact that the headline should have been that the pastor is accused for sexually abusing a victim or sexually exploiting a victim, but now your focus is on the anal sex part of it. And that's how you linked the LGBTQ community to predatory behavior and to being hypersexual. So just take a step back and put yourself in the queer community's shoes, walking past this paper, reading that, and being diluted to anal sex. And walking around already in a country where all the eyes are on us, where we're already vulnerable and marginalized, and then everything you feel is people just looking at you thinking, sex, anal sex. It dehumanizes your dignity. And again, whether or not you felt that that was the specific headline to use, I want you to tell me now, do you think that your media house abided by 4.1, protecting the dignity of people, 8.3, avoiding discriminatory or denigrating references to people's sexual orientation? That is a denigrating reference to my sexual orientation. Heterosexual people have anal sex too, but now that it's queer people involved, let's highlight that. Toivo, in Uganda, okay? Uganda got to where they got today because of religious extremists and political homophobia. One. But two, where Uganda is today, it's because of the media house fanning the flames of hate and discrimination. Rolling Stone is a very popular news outlet in Uganda, okay? And they were given the green light to report such things on the queer community, to hypersexualize them, to link them to predatory behavior, to release a list of who queer people are in the country, to report on how queer people are having sex, whether they are pastors, community leaders, activists, reporting their names. And what happened? David, one of the most prominent queer people, was killed or activists was killed right after such a posting.
Yeah.
Do you see the responsibility that you have?
I get that. I think it's completely different because, you see, if Omar has never committed any crime, he's queer, but he's not intruding into anyone's space. He's not using his influence. You are a very influential person, given what you do and your voice, the influence of your voice, but you're not using that to exploit anyone. That's a different situation, because the Uganda situation that you're painting is people actually going after innocent queer people. In this case, we have a pastor who has allegedly done this, and you want me as a journalist to paint a glossy picture of this situation. This is bad. If we are going around looking for unemployed people and exploiting them in this manner because they are desperate, and you expect me to write a newspaper just sort of painting a glossy picture of the situation, I can't do that, Omar.
I never said paint a glossy picture. I said put the spotlight on the real things that happen. And I said it's not what you did, but how you went about doing that. And the responsibility that you need to realize you and the Namibian Sun has, especially in this moment and time. Okay? Nobody's saying don't put a spotlight on it. Nobody's saying paint a glossy picture. But say the story right and report it in a manner that abides to your code of conduct and your ethics. Again, a pastor sexually exploited a victim for sex and was offering them a job that they never actually got at the end of the day. Whether or not that was same-sex conduct or opposite-sex conduct. If this was a pastor that sexually exploited a woman, you would have never said vagina sex at all. But now that it's queer people involved, you are fanning the flames of hate by going straight to the anal sex part of it. Queer people have sex in many different ways, as do heterosexual people do. But again, since it's queer people, you have to go and do what the sodomy law criminalizes us against and pander in to that hate and that discrimination. It was not right. It was not just.
Yeah, but you see, Omar, the thing also is that because you want to juxtapose if the pastor had slept with a woman compared to what is alleged to have happened in this particular case, man to man. And I'm saying the context here is very much about this young man saying he's not even gay. So that part...
That's not the context. The context is that this is someone who was exploited for sex.
No, if it was...
It's not about gayness at all.
No, it actually is. If this guy was saying, look, I'm also gay, I had sex with this pastor, but he didn't keep his promise, the anal sex wouldn't have been an issue anymore because he's gay anyway. But when he is forced into gay sex, and he's not gay, in order to secure a job, it's important to put a spotlight on that.
No, it's not about, again, you're categorizing gay sex. It is sexual abuse. That's the bottom line. Now you're categorizing it to sensationalize this issue, okay? 1, a pastor sexually abused and exploited someone. 2, a church went and acted so fast against this pastor because of the conduct of the sex, right? Not because someone was sexually abused, but because it is a same-sex conduct, okay? And then you go and hyperbole it or hypersexualize it because it's queer people involved. So again, this is the same church, hey, that had pastors steal about 2 million Namibian dollars from them, okay? Were those pastors suspended? Absolutely not. This is the same church group that has multiple reports of molestation, multiple reports of both their followers and pastors but promoting SGBV in their own households or not putting an end to it in their own congregation. Nobody's making headlines on that, or headlines that take up half of the page on that. This is a church that acted so fast within split seconds against this pastor and his wrongful conduct, but never acted so fast in all of the previous things I've mentioned. And this is a newspaper that is putting out a headline that is so dehumanizing that on the next day, there's not a single headline on what civil society has said to hold their government accountable. So it just shows where the Namibian Sun's priorities lies. You have spent a week headlining things that our members of parliament has said, the fact that they've broken their oath of office to call for the overturning of a rule of law that's going to threaten a constitutional democracy which allows you to put out such dehumanizing content, but you're not going to say one thing about civil society in the newspaper the day after this is posted, saying that civil society is ringing the alarm that our democracy is under threat. Your press freedom is under threat if they come for queer rights first. And you're not going to say a damn thing about that.
No, but Omar, you know for a fact that you are actually on our social media platforms, which is 80% bigger than this newspaper in print will ever be. Of course, I didn't have enough space on Friday to put the article itself because my report...
You didn't prioritize enough space on Friday. You didn't prioritize enough space. Because if you can prioritize half of your page,
the story would run
Namibia, prioritize half of the page for a headline that is so dehumanizing. I'm sure you have the power to prioritize page for what civil society has to say.
No, I did. We did indeed report on what we have video clips of you with huge mileage on social media. Again, you must understand the power of social media, and you do. There's no way that the article in the newspaper would have even come anywhere close to what the mileage you have gotten out of what we have put out on social media. So, and we'll publish. By the way, I'm assuring you now, we'll publish in Monday's paper your press statement. If it's not enough, if you think
that's not what I'm asking.
If you think it's late,
I'm not asking for airtime. I'm not asking for space. I'm showing the Namibian people where the Namibian Sun's priorities lie.
No, but it's
that
important.
If it's not about, if it doesn't give the Namibian Sun enough, or if it doesn't allow the Namibian Sun to sell papers off the backs of the marginalized groups, that they will not prioritize putting that in the papers. It also just shows by you saying, well, yeah, you know, our social media has more reach, you know, this isn't such a big a deal. Absolutely not. If I was the 13-year-old queer Omar living in the 2015 Namibia that was very much different from where it is today, and I walked past this, do you know how much that would have affected me? Do you know how much that would have sent me home contemplating suicide? Because this is all Namibia will look at me and think of me, that I am just a walking sex figure, all I'm about is anal sex, that I don't have hopes, dreams, or visions in this country.
No, but you're generalizing.
It hurts.
No, but you're generalizing. This is speaking specifically to someone who has
sexually abused. Yes. Doesn't matter how they're sexually abused. They're sexually abused.
Yeah, no, but like I gave you context. You don't want to hear the context. It's not just. This is not just. Like I said, it's not just a normal gay intimacy.
So being gay is not normal?
No. I'm saying this is not.
And queer love is not normal.
No.
Queer love needs to be ripped apart. Queer love needs to be told how we have sex. Queer love needs to be spotlighted. Queer love has no privacy. Queer love has no right to dignity. Queer life can be denigrated.
There's no dignity in what happened in this case.
Absolutely not.
And that is what we are highlighting. You are generalizing because
you're saying that anal sex is not dignified.
No, because you want to appropriate this issue and make it a general issue that it also that somehow the headline also applies to. It doesn't. You can't appropriate this headline. It's not about Omar or any other person that is queer. This is a case of this particular pastor who has exploited this young man, who the young man says is not even gay. That I had to highlight. You want me to be.
But you know there are men who have sex with men that don't identify as gay or bisexual, right?
Yes, but in normal circumstances where you just engage in that
Okay,
activity.
so if Toivo, if the victim identified as gay, would the headline be the same? And I need you to answer me honestly.
No.
Would you,
No,
if
no,
the victim identified as gay?
No, I wouldn't.
No, you still would. You still would have
No.
framed this pastor as an anal sex pastor, when even the pastor, for as much as what he did was wrong and disgusting, did not deserve to be framed as that. Do you think that this headline, anal sex pastor, avoids discriminatory or denigrating references to people's sexual orientation? Both of these people do not identify as gay, right? But calling this pastor an anal sex pastor is a denigrating reference to someone's sexual orientation. So your argument saying that because the people didn't identify as gay gives us the right as the Namibian Sun to denigrate and make discriminatory references against sexual orientation.
No, but it's not, again, this is not just sex that occurred like under normal circumstances. And this is the point I'm making.
Now that's what I'm saying. It should just have said sexual exploitation or sexual abuse if it's not sex that occurred under normal circumstances. But now you made it an abnormal circumstance.
It's not normal. When you exploit people who are desperate,
yes,
and get them indulged in sexual activities that are not even conforming to their preferences, there's nothing. You want me to paint again, like I said, you want me to paint a picture that no, this was normal, this was okay, it was just exploitation. There's so much beyond just exploitation. If it was like you gave an example earlier of what if this was a woman and a pastor who's man, that sexual exploitation would be limited to just exploiting this desperate woman. But when you force a man who's not gay to have sex with you on the promise of a job, that is even way more than just exploitation.
That's why I'm saying, hey, because you've made now a reference, but with opposite sex and same-sex sexual exploitation, you've categorized same-sex sexual exploitation as something taboo, as something dehumanizing, as something that has no dignity. Do you see what I mean? Sexual exploitation is sexual exploitation. Doesn't matter between who or how it happened. It is sexual exploitation. But now you have made it something bigger. You have made it something taboo, something that should not exist. You have fanned the flames of hate and played right into the cards of the homophobes by saying this.
So what is homophobic about anal sex?
Nothing at all. But you have sexualized, hypersexualized, and predatorized the queer community by highlighting that as anal sex. There is nothing wrong with anal sex, whether it happens in a heterosexual or homosexual relationship. But you have made it taboo by spotlighting that. And it is dehumanizing.
I was very surprised that anal sex has actually infuriated your community very much to the extent that you spoke the way you spoke at the press conference, because are you not comfortable with the fact that that kind of sex exists? Because I thought, I mean, we have people fighting even against the sodomy law so that anal sex can be decriminalized, so that it becomes, as a matter of fact, maybe even more legal. But now that we mention it, somehow we are now sexualizing things. But when Mr. Dausab, who is in Friedel Dausab, who's fighting sodomy law, he can go to court and say, remove this thing because anal sex takes place, and there are people who enjoy that, but that is not hypersexualizing to you. But when I do the same, I'm hypersexualizing.
Toivo, conversations about sex, especially in Namibia, needs to happen, okay? And the fact that we don't openly speak about it as a country because we have some idea that it's a conservative or taboo topic shows that there's still a lot more work to be done. And there are many youth out there too that have started podcasts to destigmatize sex, and there are many civil society organizations too that are doing the work to do that, all right?
Yeah.
But your parallel between us advocating for the decriminalization of the sodomy law and the fact that you as a media house are out here reporting dehumanizing headlines cannot be compared, okay? It is the queer community's right to go and decriminalize an apartheid-era law that continues to criminalize our right to love, okay? But you spotlighting a headline like this continues to reinforce stereotypes and stigmatizes our community, which is way different from us trying to advocate to decriminalize a law that will lock us up just because of who and how we love. That's a vast difference, and a vast difference of comparison. In fact, they shouldn't even be compared at all.
Okay.
And I hope like you can understand that.
No, look, I want you to understand the context of why we are going for a break now, but I needed us to unpack this subject so that, we have discussed it internally just for your information. As a matter of fact, on Wednesday evening, me and Cindy, my colleague, we discussed in detail this before the headline came out the next day. Is it too much? Is it too graphic? We tried a few options. We settled for this. So it's not like we were just completely ignorant and felt just okay. So we had an internal debate, and we convinced ourselves that it was okay. But we are not shooting down your concerns. I think it's a lesson that we can also learn. It's not something that I would apologize for, but it's something that I could perhaps do differently, lighten up the tone a bit. But yeah, we go for a quick break and then we return.
We are so excited to be kickstarting your morning with the entertainment.
Everything was happening during this past weekend.
Yes.
Exciting news.
Wow, no, she was killing it already.
In my opinion, I don't see anything wrong with him serving the full term.
As well as keeping you informed on the issues that you need to know happening in and around our country.
To another exciting episode of Hier Word Talk.
Julle dis die weer en vertel ook vir julle waar die vis julle moontlik gaan byt.
We continue our conversation on the agenda. So I don't want to take away the attention from the theme of your press conference on Thursday. What was sort of the key messages coming out of that?
No, definitely. So it's been a few weeks since the Supreme Court verdict, and what we've been seeing in our country since the verdict was announced was nothing short of disheartening. We have seen a rise in hate crimes. Civil society has reported numerous rises in hate crimes and hate speeches towards the LGBTIQ community, with a lack of due diligence and arrests and serious actions from the police. We have seen a rise of incitement of violence towards the LGBTQ community, perpetuated by religious extremists and politicians and political parties, especially those that are meant to protect and serve, those that are meant to uphold the constitutional oath of office as our elected representatives and uphold the dignity of the August House. So civil society came together to brief the public on the rise in hate speech and the actions that needs to be taken to hold that to account, but most importantly to the serious threat to our constitutional democracy that we are seeing from our elected representatives, calling for the overthrow of or the overturning of a Supreme Court verdict, calling for the rule of law not to be adhered to. We are seeing a ruling party that claims to be the stewards of liberation, that claims to be the party that has emancipated every Namibian to be born free, a party that claims to be the stewards of democracy, a prime minister that leads this party, saying that she is going to propose a law banning the recognition of same-sex marriages in Namibia, a law that will not stand the muster of the Equality Clause, a law that we will continue to challenge in the courts of law, a bill that is being proposed that will not be able, that's not going to adhere to Chapter 3 of our Constitution, which is our Bill of Rights, which says that everything in Chapter 3 cannot be chipped away. No act of parliament in a born-free Namibia can be proposed that takes away or infringes one bit on any of those more than 21 rights that are enshrined in Chapter 3, the Bill of Rights. So if such a law gets proposed, not only will it fail in courts, but it is a waste of the Namibians' taxpayer money. And I want Namibians to realize that this is a party that is continually showing you that they are going to abuse their oath of office and abuse the constitutional rights and freedoms that they wrote in the Constituent Assembly. We have seen the Ministry of Home Affairs waste so much taxpayer money these past few years with 9 LGBTIQ court cases that they continue to lose in the courts. And now we are seeing a ruling party proposing a bill that's not going to pass at all just to gain cheap campaign points off of a vulnerable group. Politicians that have nothing to offer and political parties that have nothing to offer the Namibian voters, what do when there's an election cycle? They scapegoat a vulnerable and marginalized group for cheap campaign points. Yeah. We see it in Uganda. We see it in Turkey. We see it with the Republicans in America. SWAPO can't go around anymore saying, vote for us, we liberated you. Because that is an old story. We are tired of that. We want to see actions on your campaign promises. SWAPO can't go around claiming to be the stewards of liberation if their leaders are calling for a sodomy law to still be maintained, an apartheid-era law that criminalizes who you love. This makes SWAPO no different from the apartheid regime that they fought against. This makes SWAPO the oppressed who have become the oppressors. To hear Jerry Ukanjo say, I did not go to Robben Island to fight for a republic of homosexuals. Jerry Ukanjo, you went to Robben Island to fight for the liberation of every Namibian, to fight for unconditional equality. Not equality for all except, not equality for all but not. Equality for all Namibians. That's why these politicians, these leaders, including the founding president, will be leaders that are nothing close to a leader like Nelson Mandela. Because when President Nujoma had the opportunity to build a Namibia that's tolerant and more equal for everyone, he used his position as a president to call for the arrest of queer people, Namibia's most marginalized and vulnerable group. This is why LGBTQ rights is the civil rights issue of our generation in a born-free Namibia, just like racial justice was the civil rights issue of our generation. And SWAPO's legacy will always be tainted by their state-sanctioned homophobia. And every Namibian needs to get registered to vote, because if they come for queer rights today, and if our constitution falls because of state-sanctioned homophobia, whose rights are at stake tomorrow? Yeah. Go vote like your lives depend on it. Vote like the Constitution depends on it. Vote like Namibians' dignity depends on it, because it does. And vote them out.
I hear you. So, help me understand one thing, Omar, here. Does everybody who is opposed to homosexuality as an orientation a homophobe?
Everybody that's opposed to homosexuality as a sexual orientation, a homophobe.
Yeah, if somebody says, look, culturally where I come from, the way I was brought up. Because you see, the thing that I have a problem with is that we seem to always forget that for a lot of people in this country, this is a new concept. They grew up in settings where this didn't exist, and people have to be orientated to start coming to terms with this reality. But to expect that somehow they would just stand up and say, yes, it's fine, homosexuality is a good thing, that is very unrealistic. People they need exposure, they need education, they need to take time.
Absolutely. And that is why the laws need to change, to recognize us as equal citizens in this country, so that we can get to work to heal the scars and the horrors that discrimination has been inflicted upon us, so that we can get to work to teach each other to love everybody in this country, regardless of your gender identity or sexual orientation. But if the laws like the sodomy law continues to be there, we will always be seen as less than and second-class citizens. Yes, everybody that opposes homosexuality is a homophobe, just like every person that doesn't see black and colored people as equal or any color as equal is a racist, okay? During apartheid, did we expect white people to just come to terms with things? Did we call for a referendum during apartheid to give the political majority, who were white people at that time, the opportunity to vote? Do we think that if there was a referendum during apartheid that the white political majority would have voted for an equal Namibia? Absolutely not. Homosexuality is not a new concept. We have always existed. Before the colonizers came, when the colonizers came, they wrote about the Khoikhoi Gobab and the Oshivambu communities that celebrated trans people as the healers, as community leaders. Why does the word Omashenge or Shenge exist if the West just brought it? Homosexuality is not an import to Namibia. Homophobia is an import to Namibia. The sodomy law is not a law that we wrote and elected into the Constitution or into our laws. The sodomy law is an import from the British colonizers to make sure that Christianity and the worst parts of religion gets inflicted to discriminate against the queer community. Namibians are not just seeing queer people for the first time now.
No.
Although we have become more visible. And visibility is the queer community's greatest weapon against state-sanctioned homophobia. But Namibians are not new to homosexuality. We all have a queer family member, friend, colleague. We've been around homosexuality. But what is new right now is the homophobia that is coming from religious extremists and our leaders, and that is a shame.
Yeah.
Namibians are one of the most tolerant people in Africa. 64% of Namibians, according to a 2019 Afrobarometer tolerance survey, is shown to be tolerant of their homosexual neighbor in 2019. That is a 10% jump from 54% in 2016. Yeah. An Ombudsman's 2013 survey found that 73% of Namibians support civil rights protections for the LGBTQ community. Yeah. That is in 2013. Okay, now this makes Namibia the fourth most tolerant country in Africa. I know it all feels like the majority of Namibians are against LGBTQ persons, or the majority of Namibians are homophobes. No. I know deep in my heart that your average Namibian knows how to love, knows how to be tolerant, knows how to accept. It's just unfortunate that the homophobes have the mic. And actions like this contribute to that hate speech and gives the homophobes the flame and the fuel that they need in this country. Your average Namibian knows how to accept, because we know what the horrors of discrimination feels like coming 33 years out of apartheid. Yeah. So, yes, if you oppose the LGBTQ community, you are a homophobe, and you need to do the work to decolonize your mindset.
Yeah, I need to, yeah. So, we have seen, like you said correctly, that since that judgment came out, which is also very misconstrued by a lot of people.
Yeah.
there's been some really disturbing incidences, people recording themselves saying, yeah, we know where gay people drink, we will descend on those spots and deal with them and stuff like that. That, I agree with you 100%. It's not only criminal. I mean, it's not only homophobic, it's also criminal. But if somebody simply says, look, I'm not going to stand in the way of anyone who's gay, but it's not an orientation that I accept, how does that make one homophobic?
Because you don't see a queer person as human. You don't see a queer person as having the right to be equally in this country. You don't see a queer person as having the dignity to, or as having the full dignity that you have, okay? What is African culture and African values? It is Ubuntu. And what does Ubuntu mean? It means that my dignity, Toivo, is tied into yours. My humanity can only be fulfilled through yours and your recognition and respect of mine. That is Namibian values. That is African values. So while you might not agree with the LGBTQ community, you must respect them. Yeah. And you must understand that in a born-free Namibia, the liberties that we fought for is equally or should be equally applied to them. Nobody's asking you to not practice homosexuality or whatnot, but that is fine. But why my rights start where yours end? So to impose on our rights to take up space and exist in this country makes you a homophobe, and it shows your exertion of your homophobic view in this country. I might not, I might not agree with how black and colored people operate in this country, but yeah, that doesn't make me a racist. I just don't think that they deserve affirmative action in this country, or that there needs to be a quota to diversify a board of directors to make sure that there's equal representation. But that doesn't make me a racist. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Can we see the parallel? How far have we come as a country if we are going to continue to oppress on someone just because of their identity or their social status, which, by the way, the Constitution says that everybody's equal under the law, regardless of their social status. Being gay in this country is a marginalized social status.
Yeah. You referred to the Republican Party earlier on in the USA, and there's a big conservative movement going on right now there. And I mean, part of the problem now, Omar, is that this perceived intrusion of the LGBTQ community into the space of heterosexuals. People saying, for example, that people who have declared themselves as women are now participating in female sports and winning all the trophies. That toilets now, a biological woman comes into a toilet, I'm there busy taking a piss, and there's a biological woman looking at me, and just because they've declared themselves as a woman, I must just say. So this intrusive space is also what makes a lot of people uncomfortable. Or gender pronouns. We must now be forced to say she to a biological man. That is intrusive in my space.
Okay, well, first, people don't proclaim, okay? This is your sexual orientation and your gender identity is who you are. It's what makes up your humanity, okay? It's not like queer people wake up one day and they switch up a light bulb and this is how you identify. These are things we grow up with and we struggle with for years, okay? It took me a while to understand what my gender identity as non-binary is, to understand that I'm being forced I'm being forced because I was born male to be a man, and now that I have to identify as a man, I have to exert my masculinity, I have to dress a certain way, I have to police in the way I talk, in the way I express. And then people mock me if I don't express my masculinity enough, if my voice isn't deep enough, and then they want to humiliate me by calling me a woman, or my voice is soft. So I'm always between these two. I'm always being pushed into these two boxes. I'm not man enough, and then I'm mocked as a woman. So for me, where I find my realization of who I am and how I see my existence in this world that God has blessed me with is non-binary. And all I'm asking for you is to respect that. I'm not asking for you to practice that or to identify your way, because I respect you as a man. Why can't you respect me? In apartheid, we were telling people to drink from a different fountain, to use the shop entrance from a different, to go to the cinema in a different entrance. And now, when we came into a born-free country, we also heard a lot of white racists saying, "Ooh, they're taking over. Dis wat mense vat oor." We have not come far. We have not come far. There's no difference in the way we treat queer people in this country. So the hysteria that the Republican Party is causing with trans people and sports and bathrooms, it's all just hysteria for, like I said, cheap campaign points, because they have nothing to offer their voter base at all. And it's not anything we should play into as Namibians. We should understand where we come from as a country and what type of country do we want to build. Ask yourself, Namibia, what type of Namibia do we want? Do we want a Namibia that is founded on love and acceptance and tolerance and Ubuntu and diversity and inclusion, or a Namibia where we hate and discriminate and promote bigotry against the most marginalized and minority group in this country? And if that is the Namibia you want to live in and you want your children to grow up in, throw the Constitution away, because we have not come far as a country. But it is the Namibia that we believe in. And that Supreme Court verdict is not just bringing equality for queer people. And there's still more work to do, still more battles we need to win. But that Supreme Court verdict strengthened Article 10, equality and freedom from discrimination, not just for the queer community, but for generations of Namibians to come. Any Namibian that is found to be discriminated against based on sex, race, your ability, your economic status, your social status, that Supreme Court verdict protected every minority group in this country, or every Namibian that might be discriminated against on their social status. So it is queer people that are making sure that this Namibia is a Namibia that is truly born free and more equal for every Namibian, no matter how you identify.
Yeah. Omar van Reenen, thank you, my brother. Thank you for.
It's okay.
Thank you
No
for coming to
problem.
the show.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. That is Omar van Reenen, of course, sharing with us his perspectives on the recent discourse, the current discourse in the country around homosexuality and rights there too. Thank you for watching.
No, we are.
E-Ticket, your online ticket solution for events and event marketing, bringing you ease of mind and making sure that your event gets out there. For more information, contact events@nhh.com.na.
Welcome to My.NA Cars, your ultimate destination for everything automotive.
I am your host, Diana Master.
Teamwork makes the dream work, right?
Discover the latest models, innovative technologies, and expert insights from our passionate hosts. Learn essential maintenance tips and get exclusive behind-the-scenes access to the automotive industry. Don't miss My.NA Cars on NTV every Thursday at 2100 hours. Tune in and ignite your passion for automobiles.